and graphic design. It's a very important component. And so this is me working through the process, and you can see the colors are muted right now because I'm focusing more on the details. And as I go through the illustration, I'm just adding more details and playing with the colors. So you see that in a moment I'll be playing with multiple kind of colors and like small details, what works best. So you have to experiment a lot while creating these pieces.
Just a quick introduction. I'm one of the founders of Mentoria. Today, we're going to have an absolutely incredible conversation on the world of graphic design and illustrations and building a career in it. We have with us an amazing guest. Please welcome Ujjwala Bassi. Ujjwala is a visual artist. She's armed with a host of creative skills. I mean, absolutely amazing work. We're going to send links to her portfolio at some point in this entire conversation. She does illustration, animation, graphic design, package design, print design, branding, music cover artwork, and a lot more. Right? She's also listed as one of the top 10 designers to follow on LinkedIn. And today we're going to get to know a little bit more about her journey, about what it is to be and build a career in the world of graphic design, and the kind of challenges that sort of come forth. So welcome, Ujjwala, and thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you for having me.
Super. So let's begin by getting to know you. For the audience watching the video, could you share a brief introduction of yourself and what you do?
So, hi, I'm Ujjwala. I am an independent self-taught graphic designer and illustrator. I am based out of Delhi and I offer services like illustration, graphic design, a bit of animation to a roster of clients all around the globe. Yeah, so I was always inclined to creative things as a child. I used to sketch and draw. I used to make everything my canvas. So I had this creative instinct. And as I grew, I focused more on academics and then managed to pursue BTech in computer science. And a year into it, I realized that this is not what I want to do. I would like to do something which is more, I'm more passionate about. So I started looking for avenues. I started discovering things. I landed an internship in my second year, which opened me to the world of event and artist management. There I started designing a bit for events like posters, maybe social media posts for some artists. So I think that was my initial introduction, and then I realized quickly that this is what I wanted to do. And the transition was in my last year of engineering. I decided that I didn't want to sit for the placements. I used that time to learn softwares, and gradually I decided, I think it took me about like 6 months to a year, and then I landed my first freelance project, and then that's how I knew that this is what I wanted to continue. So illustration and graphic design both require a skill to create a composition to attract the viewers, the target audience. While illustration will be a representation of an idea, you'll be creating an image that will represent an idea and a concept. Graphic design is something where you're problem solve through design, through objects, through text. You'll form a composition, and that's your targeting your audience. You're persuading them, for example, to buy a product. So you're problem solving. So it's representation versus problem solving. Yeah, so I'll tell you, the first organization that I worked for was they designed games for children. So I started graphic designing for them, and because it involves children, so there are images, there is illustration involved. and I just mentioned it to them that this is in my skill as well. I can draw, I can illustrate. So by the end of the year, when I was working for them on a retainer project, I started illustrating for them as well. So I was designing the board game, like how you would put numbers in a number game. Maybe Snakes and Ladders is a game, and you're designing how the numbers are being put up, where the ladder is, and everything, and that's graphic design for you. What the image of the background is to captivate the children would be illustration. Like you're making the snake, so you're drawing that snake, and it's a representation that this is a Snakes and Ladders game. So design and illustration in that project for me joined together. So I can tell you that if you're freelancing, no 2 days would look the same. So your structure, everything would be dependent on you. And if you're working a job, so you'll be working on a project basis, so project to project. So your hours will be focused on working through a brief that the client has given. This is both for freelancers and if you're working a job. So your day-to-day would involve first you conceptualizing a brief, and then you present to the client as a mood board. Then you'll be working on it.
So you'll have to break all of that down for us, Ujjwala. A lot of us don't understand the terminologies of design. So you'll have to tell us what a mood board is. You'll have to tell us what you mean by brief. You'll have to just sort of help all of us gain a very basic understanding of what it is that you really do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So when I get from a client, they tell me what problem do they want me to solve. So that's a brief that they are describing what they would like me to achieve through design. For example, they would need poster design. So what the target audience of the poster would be, how it would be composed. Maybe they have a vision in the text, some format. They would, whatever details they could give me, those are all that is all the brief. And then I work on the conceptualization. I look for references. You let yourself wonder in that moment, whatever you can do. You use your inspiration, everything, and then put up some images as a mood board, so that you can tell your client that this is what you have in your mind. Because of course they can't just see your vision and what you want to achieve through that design. And then you make the client understand. So that's a mood board for you. So you're working on that. And then when you've achieved, both of you are on the same page, then you work through the initial sketches, initial framework, blueprint, and that's how you establish the first phase. And then the next would be working on the composition, how you're displaying the text, objects, everything together to form a good composition. And that's where most of your work is. So most of the hours would be spent in this process. This would require colors, composition, space, everything. And then I'm sure that at that point the client would also be on the same page, and then there might be few changes they might request, and you incorporate them if need be, and you finalize and you take care of the small nitty-gritties, and that's the final stage for you. That's how a whole project would end up in a day. Yeah, so a lot of the people that I know have come from a design school background. So they've studied visual communication as an undergraduate degree, and that helps them a lot as having a network, having that structure of the fundamentals of design. And that is a good way to get into it as well. You could I'm self-taught, so I taught myself all these fundamental principles through courses. So you have these courses and certifications you can search for on the web, and you can go through them as well. Both are equally good. because this profession is some place where your portfolio trumps your CV and resume. So your work speaks for itself. So either you are coming from a design background, that's also equally credible as a course and certification process. So you have courses and certifications if you don't want to pursue a degree. I think that's something that you can go opt for. You could always get that education, those topics that you need to work on, what you know that you lack in the fundamentals of graphic design, what you need to master in. So this is very subjective to all of us. So you can work through that. You can find these topics. Skillshare is a great website you can go through. You have various topics where you can, and then you can also decide which type of course that you want to opt for beyond fundamentals of graphic design. So for illustration, it's you teach yourself drawing basically. Now that's a very important skill for illustration. Or you teach yourself, if you're working through analog, you teach yourself drawing. If you want to work digitally, it's you can always learn Illustrator. There are softwares that can help you achieve illustration without learning how to draw. So you make use of the pen tool in Illustrator and you master it, so that so there are courses in that. So you are very with illustration, you're very specific in what you're studying, what your certification would be. So be design, masters in design, colleges like IIT and everything offer those courses. So you can venture into graphic design as well. Web design is a big part of graphic design, so you can venture into that from those degrees. So there are always avenues for that. So visual communication, be design, there are always many outlets to that. So Indian education offers a lot, definitely. If you're working in NID, if you're studying in NID, NIFT, IIT, all these structures at a bachelor level offer you a lot. I'm not sure about the master level. Maybe that is something that India needs to, as a country, we need to still are working towards. NID has a great master's education, and all these colleges outside, it's financially a bit stretched out, so most people may not be able to afford it. Like colleges like RISD, MICA or UAL, all these colleges are very expensive, and the living there is expensive, so most people may not be able to afford that. And that's fine, because you can still manage to get that education, if you're in a constant learning process. If you're working and learning together, you will be able to master those topics as well. So everything that these colleges teach you can be self-taught. The learnings can be self-taught. It's just that I think the network of peers and a lot of project and the exposure that you get is something that these colleges offer you a bit more. Otherwise, you have to be credible enough. You have to work really hard towards that exposure. I think it's a giant leap. It's a giant step if you get that education, but it's also you can do that yourself as well. So to build your portfolio, the first thing you need to keep in mind is that you build your portfolio around the work that you want to attract. So if you can't get those projects while freelancing or while even design school, you can always create those projects for yourself. So hypothetical projects, passion projects, so all these things that you can create yourself and would make for a great portfolio. So you need to have a bit of diversity, but not but showcase your best work. You have to diversity is good, but you need to limit yourself to, you don't have to show every design aspect that you can do. So show your best work, show confident work, maybe even show your process and thought process behind how you achieve that. If it's a complicated project, then you can definitely incorporate how, what's the process, what were the initial sketches. That framework would help clients or organizations to kind of know what goes on in your mind, what your vision is, how you work, your structure. So that definitely adds to just portfolio. So having those plus points is great. And at the end of the day, you need to build, again I'm saying this, but you need to build your portfolio and projects according to what you want, what you want to attract, the fields that you want to work in. Yeah. So I've incorporated a mix of my personal work, the projects that I work on a day-to-day basis to just constantly learn. So still life is one. 36 days of type is a great challenge on Instagram. So graphic designers should specially look into it. Um, Challenges like these help you learn on a day-to-day basis, and these are all my personal work. So you can see there's illustration in like a variety. And so yeah, if you can move down. Um, so because I want more of illustration work, that's what I mostly showcase on my website. So something like this was a music artwork that the client made, and the concept was just time. The brief that the client gave me was time as pal. So this is something that I created. They wanted something which was conceptual. It's very conceptual, but it was out of the worldly as well. So this is something that I came up. I had like 2-3 sketches in before I made this. So I made 2-3 sketches for them to pick a composition. And so the idea is represented, and then I work through the colors. So you can see there are 2 versions of the colors as well. So I've showcased my process in my yeah, so I've showcased the process in my portfolio as well, how I reached that particular illustration, and you can see a process time lapse of it as well. So this is the illustration phase. I work through the colors and gradient colors. You have to pick up on the color theory of in illustration and graphic design. It's a very important component. And so this is me working through the process, and you can see the colors are muted right now because I'm focusing more on the details. And as I go through the illustration, I'm just adding more details and playing with the colors. So you see that in a moment I'll be playing with multiple kind of colors and like small details, what works best. So you have to experiment a lot while creating these pieces. This is both for illustration and graphic design. So this was the second version that I did, and then they ended up using the night one. So this was the day version, and there was the night version. They preferred the night version as well. These were brand and social media illustrations, so I had to create characters for a mental health helpline. And this was graphic design work as well, and as well as illustration. So they knew that I had both of these skills, and they wanted me to create illustrations, as well as I have actually created pamphlets and event and worked through their website as well for that project.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, that time lapse was awesome. Yeah, Ujjwala.
Yeah. This is something that I created, and I actually suggested, why don't we add animation to it, to my client, and they loved the cover. But I wanted, because it's the song was also representative of electro pop, so I used those particular electric colors And then I wanted some movement also, so I just offered if I can animate it a bit as well. So you can see it's an animated loop GIF, and it puts in more focus on the movement, so you actually feel the spirit of the song in this artwork more.
Lovely.
This is another personal project that I did for 30 days. So I constantly keep learning, unlearning, and just experimenting a lot with different kinds of animations. So this could be categorized in children's illustrations as well. So that could help me with cold emailing clients from publishing houses. So I have a variety of clients, but it's mostly illustration because I wanted to attract. I still want to attract more projects to illustration. So for technical skills, I would say, first of all, having a grasp on the software. The software that you're using, you need to be, it's not about the shortcuts that you're using, it's about how you use a particular tool to the best of abilities, how you create design. It should feel like poetry, it should look like poetry. It's just how forming a composition with like few things. So you need to really have a grasp on the softwares. That's one. And whatever learnings you have of the fundamentals of graphic design, how do you use it as a proper skill set? Maybe you know how to code, so coding would be another skill set that you can master. So all these things add up together, but you project to project you need to know which skill set to use in which project. And communication is also one, where you how well do you communicate your ideas to the client. So I think the top two would be Photoshop and Illustrator for sure. To start out, you would need these two softwares specifically. Illustrator works great with illustrations, works great with even creating graphic design stuff. For example, you're creating layouts, you're creating templates, you may be doing a report design, document design, you need to work on the icons. So Illustrator is a great software to start with. If you're looking to for prints, for publications, you're working in that field, so I would suggest Illustrator once again, and a mix of Photoshop as well. Photoshop offers more tools to correct things, to be able to draw as well. So a mix of those two I think would be great. And then you can move on to InDesign, you can move on to Corel Draw, all these softwares. Affinity Designer is one. That's a I know that I started with that because it was the free version of Photoshop and Illustrator, so I started with that. So there are all these softwares that you can master. And so yeah, but I would say top two would be Illustrator and Photoshop.
Got it. There's also stuff like Figma, etc., that's coming in, but that's more for UI and web design, right?
Yeah, web design, UI, I think Figma is great for that. When you move on to the layouts of a web page and everything, I think Figma is great. So I think communication is one. It's also about how well you are able to grasp a concept, adapt to it. The field is ever changing, so how are you able to incorporate new ideas and new trends into your design, to be able to communicate with the target audience as well? You should know your audience really well. What is the problem, what is the structure of the problem, why do we need that design in particular, why do we need that illustration? So all these things add up, and that's, I would say, few top skills as well. So I would say if you're struggling with the software, definitely go for a course. There are a lot of courses on Udemy, on Coursera. These are places. Skillshare is one. So these are places where you can get a certification as well, and you can get like a hindsight on specific topics if you're struggling with the softwares. But mostly it's just experimenting a lot. You need to just put yourself into the software. You need to be able to create a lot. I think experimenting, exploring, that's how I reached uh, I got to know the software better, because you would of course do a certification and a course. They would teach you the basics, but you won't be able to grasp all of it until you're actually doing it. So you need to, if you don't have projects coming in, then you make a hypothetical project and then you use the tools to the best of your abilities, and that's how you learn as you perform. Yeah. So when you're a graphic designer and you have one added skill set to your portfolio, so maybe you are good at typography, so you could be a type designer. You're good at making logos, so you could be a branding designer. If you're good at creating an image for a client, so that's what a branding designer does, identity and branding. And print and publication, if you're a graphic designer who's affluent in print and publication, would be working for maybe a publishing house like Random Public House, HarperCollins, and they would be able to design books, book covers. That's what comes in. And there are a visual reality, AR, augmented reality designers. So there's a long list of designers. There's web designers as well. And if you know how to if you know how you can code and everything, so web designer is a great uh, place to work at, to be. So there are a lot of advertising agencies you can work at that offer a variety of projects. So advertising agencies like Ogilvy, Lintas, so all these are good companies to work at, and they're always looking for graphic designers, be it in-house graphic designer or freelance projects. And another place would be MNCs, organizations, NGOs, companies like animation studios like Disney. Uh, so these would be places also where a graphic designer can work in. Apart from that, I think the independent studios established in India are amazing right now. And there are definitely great place to work at, learn from others, because you are in an area where you're surrounded by creative people. There would be photographers, there would be art directors, so they could also be a mentor to you. You could see different creative professionals working around, so your process also changes. So I think I would suggest somebody who wants to start out to work for a design studio. There are many design studios based out of Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay, everywhere, and all these places also offer a remote work experience. So you're surrounded by creative professionals, and that's definitely a learning experience. You get to work on great projects. And I know a lot of people who have started to work for a studio, and then a year or two down, they've got that confidence and that skill set in themselves, that they've been um, very assured to work independently, and they've started their freelance journey after that. So for an internship, it's definitely added bonus to your learning process. And it's also, internships also offer a place where you can learn, you can make mistakes. It's not so much harsher, it's much harsher to make a mistake at a job. And internship is somewhere where you can learn through your mistakes, failures, everything, and then you get to work under someone who's creative. So you get that mentorship level, you get to know their process, their mistakes. They would offer that as well. And how to bag an internship, it's you would, of course, focus on your portfolio, make a great portfolio, offer them an additional skill that you can add. Of course, just being very curious to learn, showing them that communicating to the employer would be a great advantage as well. Yeah, so Dribble is one, Behance is one, Glassdoor is one. These are all places where you could find internships, and of course LinkedIn also offers that you could just put out your work and you would see a long list of jobs recommended to you and according to the skill set that you have. If you put your skill set in LinkedIn, for example illustration, graphic design type, you would be able to see the recommended jobs and internships as well. Also, I would say reach out to people if you're interested in a company. If you're interested in a studio, drop them a cold email, make it personalized, I would say. That's definitely a good point. Drop your portfolio, tell them that you're keen on working with them, and make it personalized. Know that what they are doing. Just don't drop a cold email that's the same format to everybody. Make it personalized, see what they want, would want from you, what do they do, what does the company offer. So uh, target your portfolio according to that. Personalize your portfolio as well as your cold email. And I'm sure cold email, I think trying is the best thing. And maybe 3 out of 10 cold emails work. So even those 3 opportunities would be great.
Lovely. Just to add on to that, Ujjwala, and this is just something for the audience who asked or is thinking about how to get internships. There was somebody once who wrote to me to get work with Mentoria in context of design, who actually went ahead and made a complete, like a small deck of recommendations that they have to Mentoria's social media or Mentoria's website design, where they actually recreated this entire thing basis the tools that they had access to, right? And you know how they'd like to do our social media posts and how they'd like to do our blogs and what they'd like to redesign, right? And unlock some of the stuff. So I think that that's another cool way to reach out to potential people that you want to work with, where you know you take their existing stuff, redesign it basis your own skills, and then potentially share that with them, saying this is what you could do better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're kind of showing them what you can offer, what your skill set is, and how you can make their existing designs better. So that's a very good way of convincing them, and that you are the right person for this job. So, of course, as your work grows, when you get into designing as a fresher, like a junior designer, and you're on the learning process, you know that you're on the learning process, and maybe the income won't be as much income. I think the average income for a junior designer would be somewhere around 2.5 to 4.5 per annum. And as you move along, as you take up more projects, more knowledge, you kind of give the company a reassurance that you can take up leadership roles. So they would promote you to a mid-range or even a senior graphic designer. So, and then the income of course increases. It's of course it would be like a year or two into the position, the junior designer position, and then you would reach to a mid-range or a senior designer. So but you can always accelerate that if you can give that reassurance to your company that this is the leadership role you can take, because senior designers make many creative decisions by themselves. So the brief, the creative decision, everything. And further down you can graduate into an art director, and then creative designer. So so that those positions keep on coming, but your work and your growth, your learning process continues. if you are very confident in your skill, you know what you bring to the table, you're sure about it, that definitely helps in going forward earlier.
Got it, understood. And so, I mean, as your seniority increases in the career, you're saying the primary job becomes managing teams and managing other designers and mentoring them and coaching them. Is there anything else that one does differently as one grows in the career?
So I think your own personal work also, you need to have that personal experience on the side. I think most good graphic designers who are working a job have the personal have their personal work as a extension of themselves. So the company that recognizes that, people beyond the company recognize that. So that's definitely an added thing that helps the company realize that we have a graphic designer who can move up the ranks very well. So my goal in life, and as a graphic designer or an illustrator, would be not just focusing on doing good work, but I want to do work for the good as well. So working for social causes, working for NGOs. I've been lucky enough to work on topics like mental health and global health. So I think working for a social cause, you realize you have a responsibility as a designer. So that is what really keeps me going as a graphic designer. That's the best part that I like, that I have this responsibility that I use to impart a good message to maybe even people who can't read or write. So through visual communication, I'm able to continue to convey them a message. So I would say relying more on inspiration every day as motivation. Inspiration is not consistent, and sometimes you make that habit of, we're not inspired enough to create, we're not inspired enough to do this. I think consistency should be replaced instead of that, just showing up to do what you do. Maybe it's less some days, but I think that's very romanticized idea of a graphic designer, of having to constantly be inspired or create. Some days it won't happen, like the pandemic happened, so every day looks the same and you're not inspired as much, but you show up to work every day. That's one. And the creative blocks that you have to deal with sometimes, you are stuck in this creative block that you can't get rid of, and how you work through that is something very subjective to each. Some people push through that creative block, they still try to produce something or the other, and that makes them feel better, and eventually they get rid of that creative block. Some people shift to different medium altogether. Maybe they're like, okay, let's take a break from creating, from designing, and they are more focused on something else. So having that work life balance is important. So I would say sometimes people don't focus on the work life balance, and I'm also learning that every day. So creation, for someone who creates on an everyday basis, the creative blocks are supposed to they come from time to time, it's inevitable. But how you deal with that, it just makes it easier every time you get a creative block. Okay, so graphic design, the field of design, any creative career is constantly evolving. So the introduction of AI has made graphic design, the world of graphic design and creation, a bit unstable amongst people's heads. But in reality, I think it's making it much easier. So now you have these things like Mid Journey and DAL E2. So where you can just input a sentence and they would create an image for you. So this is something that can work towards our creative journey and process. Now, the mood board that I was talking about, that you have to create for a client, maybe you use that AI to create that vision, and the client can understand that. And so the usage of AI and the adaptability a graphic designer needs to have is very important. And you also, with the Web3 NFT spaces, you can there is a certain skill set I wouldn't say the skills remain the same, I would say, but there's knowledge and learning that you need to go through, because it's a constantly changing environment. So you need to adapt, you need to learn the aspects of it. For example, you're a web designer who's designing for a NFT marketplace, so your skill set remains the same, the knowledge have of code, but you need to know how NFTs work. For that, how does crypto work, what are crypto wallets, how do you want to present the page layout for the best user experience. So I would say you should know about it, you should read about it every day. I think that's a very important aspect when you're heading into the future. So I think it's important. First thing is important to learn how to say no. Having boundaries for your work and life are very important for a stable, uh, you know, stable creative process. You need to have your mental stability in place. And if a project or a job is costing you your mental well-being, your financial well-being, maybe you're not getting paid enough for it, so you need to keep all of these things in mind. And it's fine to say no. Also know that what you bring to the table is good. Be confident in what you bring to the table. And because sometimes clients would be like, this is maybe this is not worth the pay, or this is not worth the cost, we can't define it. If they don't understand it, you make it a point that you understand it, you communicate well what you can bring, you show them through the process, but you should be confident that this is what you bring. And last, I would say, just have fun, keep exploring, keep experimenting, learn from your failures, make mistakes. No, nothing is a failure if you're learning from it. I think these are the three things that I learned a little late.
Sage advice. Thanks for sharing that with the audience. All right, now the floor is open to the audience for any questions that they might have about the world of graphic design or illustration. So we've got Samik with the first question. Samik, I'm just unmuting you. Over to you.
Yeah, I have a very basic question. Is handmade drawing important for graphic designing? Because I'm very bad at drawing, so I wanted to ask that.
Hi. So no, I mentioned this, but the drawing by hand is not important for graphic design. You could create, so graphic design is basically creation through objects, text, images. So you can use various things to create. But even for illustration, for that matter, if you're going towards illustration, you could draw with a pen tool. Everything, if you need to master your software to get a hold of how you want things to represent, but it's not important to learn how to draw.
Super, I hope that answers your question, Samik. We've got Ishan asking the next question. So Ishan, over to you. I've just unmuted you. You can go ahead and ask your question.
What do you like? How much could you possibly earn in a job of design?
So I think that the pay depends on how many years you bring. For a fresher, I would say a good portfolio and a good opportunity would give them about 2.5 to 5 per annum. But as you grow in the field, the years of experience you have, the learnings you do in a job, that increases significantly with position. So senior designer would earn up to seven, And
Sorry, just to interrupt there, by 2.5 to 4.5, she means 2.5 to 4.5 lakhs per
yeah,
year.
yeah.
Yeah, and 7 also is lakhs per year, just in case anybody didn't get that. Sorry, please continue, Ujjwala.
Yeah, so senior designer would be in a range of 7 to maybe 10 and 10 lakhs. And as you go to being an art director or a creative director, it further goes, and you can, in the highest position, you can earn up to 30 lakhs.
30 lakhs a year is like the highest design position
Yeah,
on an
in most
approximate.
cases, yeah.
In most cases. All right, what about as a freelancer, Ujjwala? How does that change as a freelancer?
Freelancer is a very unstable income. You have to adapt to that. But with freelancer comes also the benefit that you could be 1 month, you could be earning as much as 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, and then the next month you'd be earning somewhere around, let's say, 60 or 70. So the fluctuation is there. If you can cope up with the fluctuation, but it's very subjective in a case of freelancer how much they earn per annum.
Got it. Super. I hope that answers your question, Ishan. We now have Rishvi who's going to be asking a question. Rishvi, I've just unmuted you. Please go ahead and ask your question.
So the work you showed, your work, all of it was digital. And what if I am more comfortable with pencil and paper? So is there a way I can continue that way, or do I have to learn digital art?
Hi. So no, learning digital art is not definite. You can definitely work analog. You can, if you're comfortable with that medium more, definitely go for that. There is no disadvantage to working just analog. I know a lot of print designers who work, surface pattern designers who draw their work, and then if they need it to be printed, they work in Photoshop and Illustrator. So for it's an added advantage to know the software, but if you're comfortable drawing analog, it's great.
But what about the career opportunities, Ujjwala, in drawing analog or in drawing using pencil paper? I mean, wouldn't that inhibit the scale and the potential career opportunities versus knowing digital art? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So I don't think so, because analog can easily be digitized. You can digitize analog, you can just scan what you've drawn into Photoshop. So learning the software, I would say, is a must, but drawing analog is not. So the opportunities remain the same, for digital as well as analog. If somebody maybe wants to venture into animation, then you require to work in digital, I would say.
Got it. Understood. Super. I hope that answers your question, Rishvi. Any other questions, please feel free to raise your hands and we'd be happy to answer them. We've got Swapnil who has a question. Swapnil, over to you.
Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm currently working in a telecom company, mostly mainly in the software area. So I have some limited experience with Flask and HTML. So I was wondering if those skills would be transferable in the graphic design industry.
Definitely. Hi Swapnil, you can use those skills in, for example, you can use those skills in web. So you want web design, you want to learn that skill, you already know how to code, you know how to, HTML. So that definitely is a plus for web design. I think that would be a good trajectory for you to explore.
Super, Swapnil. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions, please feel free to raise your hands and we'll unmute you.
You told that while building the portfolio, we have to showcase our work and show our work. So whom to show our work? If we don't get any projects, where should we show our work?
So you put your work as portfolio on these platforms like Behance, or build a website that, if you can, you put it on social media like Instagram, LinkedIn is a great platform where you can showcase your work. And also there is another way of reaching out to clients, the interested companies that you want to work for, interested design studios that you want to work on, you drop them an email, you share a link to your portfolio, you build an email that you are keen on working towards in working in their organization, and that'll be a great start.
What I've also done is I've shared the links of Dribble and Behance on here with everybody in case anybody wants to see. We'll move on to our last question from Kashish. Kashish, I've unmuted you, so please feel free to ask your question.
Yeah. Hi. So actually, I have two questions. First one is editing included, like video editing kind of stuff in graphic designing? Because I've heard from some people that it is. And my second would be, if I take a course in graphic designing, after it is done, how can I start freelancing if I want to work from home?
Okay, so video editing I think would be a good skill set, but video editing as a sole thing wouldn't be a part of graphic design. It could be an added skill set that you have while you're graphic designing. And after you've done a course, educational certification in graphic design, again the thing is, to build a portfolio, you build a portfolio first, build a good strong portfolio, reach out to people that you think you can pick up projects from. Also, I would say, when you're initially starting out on a freelance journey, use those extended network of family and friends. Maybe start doing personal commissions for them, start doing save the dates or wedding invites or stuff like that, that you can if your family, friends, and everybody trusts you, so you can use that extended network. You can put yourself, maybe make some gifts for them, maybe digital portraits. These are all examples that I'm giving you, and that's how you can start off, and then maybe that will add up to your portfolio. So that's how I started my freelance journey. I would start off with I started off with building save the dates and wedding invites for people, and then eventually I got on to working for companies because I had a portfolio skill set then.
Super, I hope that answers your question, Kashish. You can share if your second question, you'd said you had one.
No, I've cleared my doubts. Thank you.
Alrighty, fantastic. Let's conclude. We've got Shrikash who wants to ask another question. Ujjwala, do you have the time to take up another one?
Definitely, yeah.
So, Shrikash, over to you.
So, hello, ma'am.
Hello.
What is the reason behind to opt a career option for graphic design?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
What is the reason behind to opt your career option as a graphic designer?
Shrikash, everybody would have their own reason. Are you asking for specifically Ujjwala's reason, or are you asking a generic question?
A generic question.
So that's what everybody would have their own reason to opt for a career in design. Na? You might have your own reason, Ujjwala might have her own. So if you want Ujjwala's reason, she can of course share that with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So my reason was I had a creative instinct. This is the thing I was passionate about the most, and I knew when I explored it at first that this is what I want to continue doing for life, that I want to be able to create. So I mentioned it to Nikhar when we were starting, that graphic design is what sustains me and illustration is what keeps me passionate and keeps me going in this field.
Super. I think we've come to an end. Thank you so much, Ujjwala, for these absolutely amazing and incredible insights. I'm sure that any person wanting to build a career in the world of graphic design would sort of get a lot of value after listening to your experiences and thoughts. And to all of you in the audience watching Career Talks with Mentoria, thank you so much for taking the time out. We hope we've been able to give you a deeper understanding of building a career in graphic design as well as illustration. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us on careerhelpline@mentoria.com or visit mentoria.com. Right? But thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time out, and have an amazing weekend ahead.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ujjwala. Pleasure hosting you here.
Thank you.